we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about these knobs here. The width knob has to do with the side-to-side motion of the needle. So as I'm moving this from 5 to 0, look over here at the needle. See how the needle moves off to the left when we're at 0? And here it's in the center when we are at 5. If you were sewing a straight stitch with this at 0, the distance between the needle and the edge of your fabric, if you're using one of these lines, would not be an even 5/8 inch or 1/2 inch. That's why we need to have this in the middle for default setting. Now, this is useful for doing these stitches here that have a width. At 5, you're going to have the widest zigzag. Here it's narrower, and if you were on 0, it would just be stitching straight. That's why over here on the selector you have CB, because it's both. So let's keep this at 5 for normal stitching. Here we have the length knob. This knob affects the back and forth motion of the feed dogs. Well, makes it go backwards, but it's the length. So here, up at 4, it takes a longer bite into the fabric, and the stitches are going to be further apart. Over here on 1, they're very close together. And here, like if we were making a buttonhole, it looks just like a buttonhole, doesn't it? We want those stitches really close together, so between 0 and 1. Now, if we had this all the way on 0, we'd just be stitching in one place. Normal garment stitch length is between 2 and 3. Another thing I want to show you about this knob here, notice I have the needle up. If you had your needle down in your fabric and you move this over to, say, 0, started sewing, that needle could bend or break. So when you move this knob or your selector knob, make sure the needle's up. Now watch when I move the selector. Look what the needle does. It moves off to one side, moves into different places, depending on what you're doing. Again, make sure that needle's up. Glance over here before you move either of these knobs here. The letters on the selector knob correspond to the letters here. Okay, so what about the red ones here? If you want to do the red ones, the red stitches, move your length knob past 4 over into the stretch stitch area. This has a little plus and a minus. The reason for that is you can make your stitches a little bit longer, a little bit shorter if you want to. Now you can only get to the stretch stitch area by moving it past 4. If you go to 0, it's got a little stopper there, so you got to go past 4 to get to that. So we're going to go back to normal stitching right here. And you've also got buttonhole capability. This knob you can move all the way around if you need to. It doesn't have a stopper on it. Buttonhole corresponds to this. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in your book. Also, we can do a video on this later, but basically the number 1 means that's the first side of the buttonhole. Number 2, that's the front bar tack. Number 3, the other side of the buttonhole. And then back to 4 is the back bar tack. So let's put this back into normal sewing right here. Good to go.